Hello folks, this is Sherri Gallagher with Technacon Company again, and we are going to be looking at Section 9 of ISO 9001-2015. The Section 9 is Performance Evaluation. Here is where we close the Plan, Do, Check, Act loop and bring feedback to top management to make important decisions on planning, resources, support, and operations. Now the first section that we're going to look at in this section of the standard is Monitoring, Measurement, Analysis, and Evaluation. The first step is for the organization to figure out what it did and didn't work and why not. That means collecting data and turning it into information. It's very important. Don't just look at raw data, make it something that's usable. So, the first thing the company has to figure out is what is it going to monitor and measure. Then it's going to have to define how is it going to monitor and measure it. Then it's going to have to define when are they going to monitor and measure it. And then they're going to have to define when is data going to be analyzed. So the evaluation of the performance is to determine the effectiveness of the quality management system. And again, whenever you're doing this, you're going to have to keep documented information as evidence of results. So now let's go forward. And the first section is one everyone hates, measuring customer satisfaction. If there is one universal dread, it is in ISO management standards, it's the measuring of customer satisfaction with a survey. Designing the survey to get usable data and getting responses back from busy customers is difficult. Commercially available services can be expensive. Getting answers from the same customer over and over again can even turn into a negative. So if you're going to use a survey, here's some do's and don'ts. Your organization needs to determine what is an effective sample size. You don't have to sample every customer. You may want to look at different types of customers, different business segments, different sales levels, but sample them, and then you can rotate your samples so you're not asking the same customer the questions over and over again. Keep your surveys simple and short. The days of 30-page surveys is gone. Ranks right up there with the robocalls. Make sure your survey can be answered in 1 to 5 minutes. Otherwise, you're not going to get answers back. Your survey can be verbal. If you have salespeople going in on a regular basis, you may have customers who feel that they're conveying that information verbally to the sales force. So if you're getting a low response rate from your surveys, you can send in the sales force to ask the questions. Now, the one caveat to that is if the customer is not happy with the sales force, then they've got no feedback to do that. So you do want to keep trying to send out the surveys. Your organization needs to know what they did right, what they did wrong. They also need to ask how they can change to help the customer's business. You want to ask the customer, what's in it for me? Not you, the organization, you, your customer. If you can answer to the customer that you are trying to help them grow their business, they're going to have more loyalty to you than to your competitor. Okay, one of my clients has a small business base. They do hundreds of orders for a single client. They would send out a survey with every invoice, and with very little success at getting answers back. Even though it was a very small 3-question survey, their customer was looking at it going, "I need to send this thing back over and over and over again." So what they did was, to the bottom of that, they selected 3 different variations of charities. And they told their client base, if you fill out the survey and check one of these boxes, we will make a $5 donation to that charity. They immediately got back a tremendous level of surveys. They're coming up at 70% response rate because their clients wanted to be able to make all these donations to a charity that was important to them. Simple, easy, inexpensive. Another customer went out and they did this whole industry-specific survey. So there was an organizational group like the electrical workers who went out and surveyed all of their customers. And they came back, and to all the member group companies, they gave them the information. And there's a low percentage, less than 10%, were asking for an online portal to be able to place orders and check orders. It really came across as a very low priority, and so the project took a couple of years at my client to be completed and set up an online portal for this, what looked to be a very small percentage of business. What they saw was in 3 months of completion of the portal, they got a 20% increase in order volume. So take a good look even at the small bits of information. They can be gems to help you grow your business. Now you also need to recognize that surveys are not the only way that you can measure customer satisfaction. You can look at your market share, you can look at customer retention, you can look at what percentage of new business comes from recommendations. Measuring complaints or nonconformances is a measure of customer dissatisfaction, not satisfaction. Now the standard has been slightly rewritten, so that's allowed to be included, but that is not what is considered a good measure of customer satisfaction. It's only what's not satisfying them, not what you can do to grow. Finally, if you are using a process-based approach, you have internal as well as external customers. You should be surveying your internal customers and making sure that you are providing satisfactory performance. It's a good place to mine for improvement projects. All right, so analysis and evaluation. While Section 9.1.3 does not ask for a review of trends, it will be required for the management review. It is beneficial to compare the Section 9.1.3 with 9.3 management review. They are very similar. The organization should provide data, not just information, remember, data, on conformity of products and services. What kinds of nonconformances are occurring, and are they getting to the customer? The degree of customer satisfaction, the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. Is it getting better, worse, staying the same? Was planning effectively implemented? I go to places and they have a wonderful plan. They just never implement it. How effective were the actions taken to address risk and opportunity? How are the external suppliers doing? What improvements are needed in the quality management system? So now if we look at the management review, the standard takes internal audits, and if you compare it to analysis and evaluation, the management review interrelates the two. I would recommend that you have an agenda to ensure that all requirements of the elements of the management review are addressed. That's one of the big easy findings, is somebody left something out. The standard does not call out how frequently the management review must be held. Instead, the frequency is determined through strategic planning direction of the business. Most of my clients will go through the various elements of the management review at a monthly or quarterly intervals as part of their strategic planning updates. They make it all one meeting, the strategic planning meeting, instead of having a separate management review meeting. Now, there is some data that is best reviewed annually. I'm thinking of supplier performance. And you should have a single person who's in charge with keeping the minutes and the agendas of the management review to verify that all the requirements of the standards are met. Now again, as I said, it does not need to be a separate meeting, and it does not need to be annually. But if you are not holding it annually, you must have justification for why it is not being held annually, like a product cycle of 2 years. What must be included in the management review? Well, information on the performance and effectiveness of the QMS, including trends. Now that's the difference between the analysis and evaluation. You've got to include trends in the management review of customer satisfaction. You need trends of feedback from relevant interested parties. Now, auditors interpret this differently, and I've seen auditors ask for feedback and trends from shareholders. I would suggest to you that you tell them to look at Section 7.4 communication. Top management decides what will be communicated, and they are not required to communicate or solicit communications of what the shareholders' feedback is. The extent quality objectives have been met. That's pretty straightforward. Process, performance, and conformity of products and services. Again, it comes straight from analysis and evaluation. You getting better or you getting worse? If you're holding the same, but you're increasing in sales, well then maybe you're actually getting better. Nonconformances and corrective actions. This is frequently a good measure of the effectiveness of the QMS and the management planning implementation. Monitoring and measurement results. Again, the organization determines what is an effective information. It can be sales growth or profitability or customer retention. But what is important and how is it being monitored and measured, and what are the trends? Audit results. Now please be very careful on the trends here. please look at the specific audit findings and compare them rather than the number of audit findings, because audit findings are actually opportunities to improve. So an increasing number of findings might be looking at a way of improvement. So if you are looking at trends in internal audits findings, you should be looking at similar types of findings. Calibration has been a finding in the last 3 audits. Okay, that's a trend and not a good one. External provider performances. Most people look at on-time delivery, quality service, and verification reports. Remember, you're looking at trends. Now, having looked at all that information, top management needs to look at how much resources are needed and where they're needed and what can they do. You may have to figure out improvement projects based on resources and spread them out throughout your time period. The adequacy of actions to address risk and opportunities. Now, on this one, I would suggest that middle and direct line management look at the product and process FEMAs and then report back to management as to changes. Top management doesn't need to know how to build the widget. They just need to know that their people are on top of making sure that the risks are controlled. Opportunities for improvement. We've talked about a lot of different ways, and we'll go into this more in section 10. Actions from the previous meetings. Did they actually get done? This is one of the reasons why you should actually look at the information from the management review more frequently than annually. If you're looking at it a year down the road and something has fallen through the cracks, that's a big oops. Changes in internal and external issues. This is where top management cycles back to section 4 of the standard context of the organization. Have they changed? How are they being monitored and measured? Has that changed? Do you need to add any? Do you need to take any away? Now, all of this should be in the agenda. What should be in the minutes are the output of the management review, and that's all documented information. The minutes should list improvements, any changes needed to the QMS, and any additions or special resources. If there's no changes needed to the QMS, a statement as to the effectiveness should be in the minutes. Otherwise, it's a simple little finding. The auditors don't want to write it. Don't give them the reason to have to. So finally, here's the last section of performance. Internal audits. All right, here's my pet peeve. Internal audits must be process-based. This isn't new. It was part of the 2008 edition of the standard. If your checklists read like a regurgitation of the clauses of the standard, it's not a process audit. For example, if the checklist reads, does the organization perform management reviews, then the audit is clause-based, not process-based, and it's not being done correctly. Second pet peeve, doing internal audits annually at the same time every year. Internal audits should be on the basis of status and importance. That means if a process is having more nonconformances or has been changed, or they're getting more nonconformances are getting to the customer, that process should be considered for an audit earlier in the cycle and perhaps more frequently. The actions of management are extremely important. Look at the number of the sections of the standard that are related to top management. It should be audited early and frequently. The standard focuses on how management does its job. Management's in control. Management should be audited frequently. If you want to upset auditors in general, then say that you don't require internal audits to be done annually. You only do them at planned intervals, which is like once every 3 years. You better have a really good justification for that if you're going to do that. And the realistic justification is not, oh, we don't have enough resources, so we have to spread it out over 3 years. That'll get a finding every time, folks. Your internal auditors need to be trained on the current standard. If the last time you trained your auditors was to the 2000 version of the ISO 9001 standard, they are not qualified to perform your internal audits. They must be trained to the current version. You can send them out to courses. You can have them take online courses. You can bring someone in to train them. But they must be trained to the current level of the standard. Finally, auditors cannot audit their own area. So, if the quality manager wrote all of the procedures for the quality department and runs the quality department, the quality manager can't audit the quality department. So, if you're doing your audits in-house, you'll need at least 2 trained auditors. If you're bringing in an outside resource, then it really doesn't matter. There should be no conflict of interest. They shouldn't be auditing themselves. Personally, I prefer in-house resources because you can do the audits more frequently. Now, I do have clients that bring me in as an outside resource three or four times a year, but it's expensive. It does give them a fresh viewpoint, but it is expensive. So that's why I recommend that you use in-house resources. So, in conclusion, Section 9, Performance Evaluation of ISO 9001-2015, is the point where management review information, not data, is looked at to determine if the QMS is effective and close the Plan, Do, Check, Act loop. If you have questions, you can email me at technacon1986@sbcglobal.net, or you can call me. There's my cell phone. Or you can look us up at technacon.com. Again, there's a little bit more of videos that are going to come out. There's one more on improvement. And that's it, folks. Go out and have a great day.